Lesson 3 about your track. As always, I hope that you will go to my homepage and click on the subscribe button and then tell all of your friends and family about my Create Your Own Tabletop Board Game YouTube channel. Now this is about your track, and I have 5 areas on the track that I like to highlight. But before I do that, I want to tell you that all the videos that you watched up till now is all about the ICM method. This is my way of showing you how to create a tabletop board game. ICM, idea, concept, mechanics. All of this that you're seeing here right now is my ICM method, my way of teaching you and showing you how to create a tabletop board game. So now on your screen, you're going to see a track now. This is the track that I created for my board game called Backtrack. Now, the first of these areas that I want to take a look at is the track route. And what you're seeing now is the track route. If you look at the start space, you'll see the dotted lines going around my track. Follow the dotted lines all the way around the track and until you get to home. Now what you'll see after following the dotted lines is that 2 things about the track. One is that it is a custom route. In other words, when you are about to create your track for your board game, I'm going to have you to create a custom track. It's going to be a track that's distinctive and unique, and it's not going to be like anybody else's track. So that's what you want to do. You want to create a distinctive and unique track route around the game board for your board game. Now the second thing is not just the custom route, but when you create your track, it's going to be a reasonable length. Now, if you start at the start space and count the start space as 1, and then continue counting each one of these trace shapes all the way around my game board and include home in your count, you'll discover that there are 80 trace shapes that make up my track. Now, some of you might ask, well, why did you stop at 80, and how did you know that 80 was the number to create your tabletop board game? It's called play testing. As you create your tabletop board game, you're going to have to continue to play test your board game. In other words, family and friends will play your board game, and they'll tell you if your board game is fun or boring. They'll tell you if it's too long or too short. They'll give you positive feedback that you'll need so that you can continue to create a great tabletop board game. So let's take a look at detached track number 2. Now, what you're seeing now is a detached track. It's not connected. In other words, the track is not connected at both ends. As you can see, at the start space is detached from the home space. In other words, when you create your custom track, you're going to create a track that's not connected. That's the ICM method. This board game Backtrack that I created, the track I could have created a square or a triangle or a rectangle or a circle, all enclosed, all attached. But I decided to create a custom track that's not connected at both ends. And that's what you're going to create when you're creating your tabletop board game. Because as I said before, all of this that you're learning is my ICM method, my way of teaching you how to create a tabletop board game. So let's look at number 3, elements. Now these are elements on my track. In other words, if you didn't have any elements on your track and you just have a plain track, it wouldn't be challenging. So when you're creating your track, you have to add elements on your track to challenge your players. Now, You can see number 5, that's my number element. You can see the X, that's the X element, and on the right you can see the color, which is the color element. So I have 3 different elements on my track throughout the track. So when you're creating your custom track, you're going to add elements, and I'm going to show you how to add elements on your track to make your board game fun, addictive, and challenging. Now, when you add your elements, you have to make sure that you add a reasonable number on the track. So you want to make sure that you have enough, just enough elements on your track to make your board game fun, addictive, and challenging. And how would you know that you have a reasonable number of elements? As I said before, you have to play test your board game. Everything that you do to make up your track and your board game, you have to play test it. You have to have your family and your friends sit around your board game and play it, and then get a pad and pencil and write down their responses and their opinions about your board game. And you have to go back to the drawing table and fix it until you have a great playing board game. So let's look at number 4, neutral spaces. Now, neutral spaces, empty spaces without elements. All right, so neutral spaces, as you can see, have no elements on them. They're just plain white spaces. So when a player lands their pawn on that neutral space, nothing happens to their pawn. That's like a resting space. So you have to have one reasonable number throughout the track. And number 2, your neutral spaces have to be well defined. In other words, when I take my pawn and land on your neutral space on your track, I should know that that's a neutral space. And usually neutral spaces on a track, on a tabletop board game, is plain white. So you know that you could rest there and don't have to worry about, that you landed on an element. So you have to have enough neutral spaces on your track to make your board game fun, addictive, and challenging. So let's look at number 5, start and home spaces. Now, as you can see on my track, I have a start space and a home space. The start space is where all the players place their pawns on the start space so that they can begin playing your board game. And of course, the home space is the end of the game. And mostly with the tabletop board games, the first player to reach home wins the game. So when we create our track, and you create your custom track, you're going to begin your track with a home space, and you're going to end your track with you're going to begin your track with a start space, and then you're going to end your track with a home space. So the start space again is where all the players place their pawns, and then the first player to reach home wins the game. And that's typically how a tabletop board game is played. Now, lesson 3 about your track: the track root, detached track, elements, neutral spaces, start and home spaces. So I hope that you'll be able to take a look at these 5 points about the track that you're about to create, that'll give you more insight on how to create a track for your tabletop board game. So everyone, this is the ICM method, and I'm going to create the next video, and it's going to show you how to actually create a custom track for your awesome tabletop board game. Thanks everybody for watching today.